welcome guests, welcome visitors. And we have, you should have in your packet, we'll start with, just go down the list here, you should have in your packet minutes from June 10th, 2025. And if you have any additions or corrections, now would be the time to say so. Cindy, I do have one question, and that would be on 6B. The zoning administrator, it talks about that, and then they had a zoning board, the zoning board met, but that all happened after that wasn't part of our meeting. So how come, do you want to put that, because that didn't happen at our meeting, I wonder if that should stay there?
No.
Okay. And I don't know where that should go.
I don't think it should be in there at all till this month.
Okay.
To say that it did meet on July or June 24th.
Okay. All right, that's the only correction I have.
Move that we accept the minutes as corrected.
Thank you. Your support?
Support.
And that was Richard.
From Richard, support Travis. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next order of business would be to ask if we have any announcements or correspondence.
None received by me.
Okay. And I haven't received any either. And so now, time for public comment. Do you have any comment from the public this evening? Welcome, Marv.
I just want to say thank you to all you members, volunteers, for doing this job. It's appreciated by me, our board, what you're all doing. When you're deliberating, just have in mind all the township and the, property rights and freedom of the people, and keep at it.
Thank you. Julie, anything from you?
I can make one more extra.
Thanks, Julie.
You're welcome.
I put Julie on the spot today.
Do we see the two zoning permits?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, zoning board of appeals did meet on June 24th. For those of us that are new on the board, Curtis, is there anything instructive you can tell us about that without breaching confidentiality or protocol?
I can tell you I was prepping for a colonoscopy.
Oh,
So I was home, I was available for a phone call, but didn't get one.
okay, very good. Dave?
I was there. The Lilies presented their findings through dealing with Curtis and coming up with some solutions. We, I say unfortunately, denied them their variance based on the evidence against current zoning. And they looked at, they were disappointed. And there's a clause in there that maybe we need to look at, but it's, I'm gonna say it wrong. It's self-inflicted. I'm not pretty sure that's the wrong terminology, but
From the board, from a
From-
zoning standpoint?
in the findings, they didn't need to put on a house. They didn't need to put on the garage. This was their choice. They brought it on. It wasn't up to us to, give all the variance because of their decisions. Again, the terminology escapes me, but it was.
Would you like me to
Yeah.
say what standard B is, that the reason that you need this dimensional variance cannot be either because of the owner or a previous property owner? So, like Dave said, it can't just be because you want it, or it puts them more non-conforming if they would have been given this variance, and it's because they want it, like he said.
And there was no other support showing that they've exhausted all the resources and they've done everything that they can to build it.
And Dave, can you give the example of when that would be satisfied, had to do with disabilities thing, right? Remember that part of the discussion?
Yes,
So if you've got, go ahead.
a doctor's, a doctor's orders, stating, you know, obviously a bunch of health stuff that is HIPAA, you know, they could go through the process of trying to get that, and possibly, that might be some backing evidence, but it was still not enough to, for us to grant the variance. It did raise some questions on that zoning and whether, maybe there's some spot zoning that we need to look at. I don't know how many, applications, if there's been any, Curtis might be able to speak to this. On Lakeshore Drive particularly, none of the houses on there are, I shouldn't say none, the majority of the houses are non-conforming as they sit. They don't meet the 33 from the road setback plus the 35, adding to 70 plus feet. As you get towards the end of the Lakeshore Drive, the road splits the Lily's property and multiples after that in a way that the cliff prohibits them from going forward, the road prohibits them from going back. Their east property line, if we were going off that, they would more than meet the variance, or they would more than meet the setbacks. So it was, kind of brought up that maybe we look into, some special, zoning for that particular, road, because they're already non-conforming. Currently, none of them, I mean, you can't do anything down there really. Their proposal fit within the road right of way setback plus 10 feet. I think it's.
Well, that the house expansion to the north, if I remember right, did come right to the road right of way.
Right.
But, yeah,
But
continue.
again, not encroaching on the roadway. So, again, I think it affects several of those lots down there. I don't think what they're wanting to do is,
Out of character.
out of character. They wanna put a garage on the house. They're both, retired, they're aging. They want the protection from the weather coming in and out. They have 1,000 square foot house. They've got kids and grandkids, and they want them to come up, and there's no room. And so their reasoning, that we felt really bad denying it, but, that's what our current zoning says. So.
Per the attorney, per the township attorney, I
Sure.
mean, she's quite adamant, and that's what you have them for, right? I mean,
So again, she said, you know, maybe we wanna visit that and see if it's, something we have the desire to look at, and we can spot zone that particular Lakeshore Drive specific and basically, you know, kinda come up with a language that might help the Lilies and anyone in the future, you know, do a small project like that. I think that could be done. Again, it meets the road right of way setback. That's kind of supersedes a lot of it. They're not encroaching on any of the other stuff. And maybe it's limited to existing structures and, you know, something to make it to where someone like that could, you know.
the clause is the number, is part B. It says, the need for the requested variance is not the result of action of the property owner or the previous property owners. In other words, it's not self-created. So that being in there, like I talked to Doug Sini afterwards, he was a little frustrated, and I get it. What would ever qualify? Because everything you're doing it's self-created, you're wanting to do that. So, I don't know where this fits with other, townships and stuff on with their boards. I don't even know. I'm hesitant to go into that stuff because how much of this is a result of legislation? You know, I don't know that. Ruben could speak to that. So, you know, we can't usurp that if it's already in law somewhere. I don't know if it is or not.
Yeah.
But it's certainly an issue. Not to belabor this whole thing, but in their situation, the showstopper was the county road right of way. And I talked to talked to Bert about that, you know, and I said, so if this project goes into that, I said, that's a full, hard stop, yes? And he said, absolutely. So, I mean, the county will have no part of anybody getting into to their right of way, for all sorts of reasons, safety and whatever, maintenance. I get concerned, once you try to alter it, so let's say you took the whole Lakeshore Drive and you said, okay, this section is, it's unique, but it's not unique, cause there's a lot of those that go out along the lake. And you do it there, then, you know.
They're mostly, associations though, that have their own, setback bylaws.
Timberlane Drive isn't, those are all individuals,
But
Their
didn't you say the
association.
road right away wasn't an issue?
Correct.
no,
It was our
Anybody want-
setback in addition to the road
Yeah.
right away, which none of those houses are 70 feet off the road.
Right.
off the middle of the road.
Right.
See, the one other issue here, and I've gotten a couple different opinions on it from Peter before, and talking about when you have a right of way that goes through your property, what's front, what's back? Well, and the lake, we know that the lake is always front, right? And we know the back is always back. But he told me that actually in a case like that, you have two fronts and you have two backs. Because of the right of way that you have to stay off of. So maybe that's something that needs to be addressed in application, you know?
Right.
The back of the property is, well, so that if somebody's behind you, you're not too close to their thing, right? And we know the sides, that's all been decided.
Yeah.
In that case, it's 10 feet down there, because they're all lots of record that are less than 150 feet. But are there two fronts, are there two backs? I don't know, I mean.
Yeah,
What's been your experience?
I'm glad to touch on a couple things here, yeah. So, first of all, I think the zoning criteria that you all mentioned, that, you know, the variance isn't created by, the applicant, that's fairly typical language. So, we see that in a lot of communities where an applicant will wanna put on an addition or something, and like, similar to what you all said, it won't be allowed by the setbacks, and that essentially isn't justification for the granting of the variance. And so that kind of thing is fairly typical, but in the line of thinking that you all were mentioning too, where, you know, if we want to adjust the front setback, because most of the houses on that particular roadway are non-conforming, and we think that's our goal, to make future development more in line with what's there now, or to allow more expansion of allow property owners to expand their residences more, then that's another thing you all can like take up, if that's the goal. So that would be something to think about, is adjusting the setbacks a little bit. And then, I think just on the last point, looking at maybe the definitions of lot lines, where the front lot line is and where the rear lot line is, and how that plays out on, lakefront properties. It sounds like that's something that.
Well, could there be a, when you're talking about those definitions, could there be a supplemental, statement in there that speaks to when, a road right of way splits a property? Then in those cases, in that specific case, then you only need to meet it, you know, maybe you change the distances you need to meet, but,
Well, it sounds like really the issue is the additional setback, the township. If it, you know, we have the road right away setback, and the township added the additional
Yeah.
setback, that's the only issue here.
well, it's.
Cause he's not in the road right away, he's not,
Right, no,
that
that's-
didn't affect it,
Right.
he didn't affect the neighbors, so the additional setback that,
It's how close we want people
that
building
we
to the road.
implemented.
Go down, go in Atwood, let's go through Atwood, look at the couple non-conforming houses right there on 31. You know, I see them and I'm aware of them now more, and thinking, well, that's not conforming, that never would be, that's pretty close to the road, you know, and, you know, I don't think we wanna go down, we don't wanna encourage that either.
think it's a unique road though, and maybe
Yeah.
that, maybe there's a couple other roads that may apply, you know, or it applies to, but I think it could be pretty specific on, you know, we're not building new houses. You go on, you know what you bought ahead of time, you know where it's taking care of people that are already there, and, you know, they're non-conforming already, right? She kept saying we can't make it more non-conforming. But if it already doesn't,
So what you wanna guard against is there are, like, I know one parcel that they're wanting to build once they get their septic thing figured out with their neighbor. And it's a small one like that again, but, you know, like you just said, you want a new house to be able to take advantage of the new rule that you might make?
Sounds like something we'll be visiting again. This spot zoning, the idea, I've never heard of that before.
Well, I thought spot zoning was illegal.
It is, yeah.
and maybe that's
Just
Well,
the term.
wrong
the term,
terminology.
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
just,
Probably more on the unique.
But that, and I don't even think that would necessarily be a spot zoning, because you're not doing it for one individual. You know, it's, but I'm not a lawyer, so,
Exactly.
you know, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, yeah, creating a new district or an overlay district, or creating a setback rule for a certain stretch of parcels could be done that wouldn't be within spot zoning, but having a certain zoning district applied to just one parcel that's typically considered spot zoning.
Okay.
Yeah. If there's a
Again,
stretch.
that was, obviously we denied it and followed the rules. We were there
Okay,
as a,
yeah. right,
to
unfortunately.
interpret the rules and
Mhm.
apply, and that's what we did, and, but it was brought up that maybe it's something that we may wanna address. We weren't sure if there's been any other requests or what kind of history there was.
Just as a, just to juxtapose this, a couple years, soon after I started as zoning administrator, we did have another, dimensional variance request on Ellsworth Central Lake Road, and it just headed south of town, where the owner wanted to put a carport out there, and, went through the whole process. They never ended up doing it, but they wanted to do it, and that was gonna encroach on their setback. But the reason that was approved was because there was a doctor involved, and it was a whole medical condition, and they needed this, so there's your number two, is not an issue at that point, or part B, I mean.
Yeah.
So,
So have you had, is that the first one you're aware of on that,
Yeah.
a unique road?
yes, for that, yeah. Mhm.
Right.
They're the first ones that, cause other work has been done down there. John Campbell, from site planning, used to be a site planner, so he's worked with a lot of people down there on additions and that sort of thing, and, you know, they've had enough room to do what they wanna do.
And it's more on that south end of the road. You get north, the
Yeah.
lots get deeper. It
It
just
will
as it starts to get south, the road moves closer to the lake,
Right.
and it splits those properties to,
But I know there's another issue on Atwood Road that's been brought up where the guy fixed his house and put it back on, but he was inside he was already established there, had a deck there, had to tear the deck off to fix a water leak, put it back on, but he was he was non-conforming originally because of setback. So now they're saying,
Well, that one is ongoing right now.
right,
That became more non-conforming, and, you know, the attorney's gonna be sending a letter, I just sent some stuff to her tonight, before I got here. And I talked to Pat about that in that situation, because they removed it, we're getting into this whole non-conforming thing, but because they took it off, you shouldn't be able to even put it back on. So, my guess is on this, because the whole nature of non-conforming is to get rid of them, you know, eventually they're gone. My guess is that one's probably gonna result in, if you put it back to the way it was, you know, we'll be okay with it, we can work with that.
At some
But
point.
you can't expand it, because the minute you start expanding it, then it's like, well, Well, what if I went another 3 feet toward the road?
That I can understand, but I think at some point, if you have to do maintenance on your home, and that was based on my understanding of that, in
Yep.
order to do maintenance on your home for the overall structural being,
Yep.
you should be able to remove something as long as you put it back to the exact same
That's
way.
that's
I
where we're
think
at.
that's the fine line, that's the gray
Yeah,
area.
that's where we're at.
As I recall, the
And,
steps used to come off at an angle towards the road.
I got a picture of it.
Right, and to me, it looks like it's close, it's offset farther back now with those, if you take it.
It's a little wider and it's a little closer to the road, and I'm
Well,
just
if you
going
don't-
from what the numbers are, right?
Right,
So
but
the
is
tape
that
measure
including,
shows
is that including the stairs though? Is that counting the
Uh,
stairs?
Yeah, but see, even the stairs, yeah.
What I'm saying is the stairs used to go towards the road.
Yeah, well, they angle
No.
off, yeah.
They did, and now they don't, they're on that
Right.
side where.
But now you got the whole deck that's that far out.
Right, so it's really not any, that's what I'm saying, it's not any farther.
No,
The
there's a
deck
lot-
itself is the
right, but
structure
there's more
as-
of it
as a
that's farther,
whole.
so it's a matter of what, you know, what expands the nonconformity. You could, there's even the question of, if you got a single-story house and it's non-conforming, well, if I wanna go up a story, does that make it more non-conforming? Some would say, yes, that does make it, because now you got more of it that's not non-conforming. Others would say, well, no, as long as you stay in with that. So, again, I'm not an attorney to decide those things, but based on what we have in the ordinance,
I guess I'm just a little concerned about an ordinance that is gonna penalize you for trying to repair your house or putting up a garage, if you wanna put up a garage and, you know, what, you
But
can't.
does that particular instance, is that meeting our setback or the road setback
It's
for?
no, it's our setback.
Is it,
Yeah,
okay.
he's encroaching on the 35 feet,
Okay.
because it's ag there, and it's down to like 22
Mhm.
or something like that. And, it was not quite that much before, and now it's more because it's a little bit bigger. But we'll get that figured out.
I'd like to see us, and I guess we're not gonna discuss this forever tonight,
No,
but
let's move on.
I think, we should talk about it more, and to be beyond the county road, all the different road right-of-ways, I think is unnecessary. I mean, take for example out in Atwood, the right-of-way is 150 feet. That's 75 feet from the center line. We have to put another 30 or 35 feet on top of that to be 100 feet away from the road with anything you do along 31. It's just, if somebody wants to build something and take a chance that the county's gonna come
You
and.
extend that village down to you though.
What's that?
I say you need to extend the village down to you.
It is past us.
Is it?
Yeah, it's past us. Yeah, so, but it's still, that road, that right of way applies.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to take a chance and build their house or building right up to the road right of way, and sometimes it's a problem with the road, but it shouldn't be, with the road commission, so, anyway, I'd like to, I think we're just adding unnecessary regulation there.
Well, I think also there's a difference between a structure and something like your flagpole or a
Oh, I
sign.
agree.
Well,
I agree.
that's, you know, it's,
Right, we already found out that we can have our sign
Right.
and our flagpole, MDOT says we can, within that space, cause Curtis and I just talked about it, we just put up a new flagpole. But even for a structure, 75 feet from the center of the road is far enough. We don't, well, and I know it becomes even a bigger deal, I think, if you're, it seems like, okay, if you can stay 75, what's another 30? But our setbacks.
your village is 20
Is it?
for the front.
Oh, 20 more feet beyond the right of
From the-
way?
Yeah, from the.
In the
from
village.
right of way, Yeah, that's
Okay,
20 feet per village.
yeah. I
Ag
think we
is
just
35.
simplify it if we just go with whatever the road right of ways are.
Okay, well, we'll revisit this issue, clearly. Curtis, do you have anything else for us?
As far as the
Moving
zoning.
on.
Moving on,
Mhm.
I've had probably 4 land division inquiries in the last 2 days.
4.
Yeah, I'm getting more of them than I am zoning permits. And I've done a couple more zoning permits, so that's still moving on. The other thing is I wanna double back later in the discussion on what we talked about, what we touched on last time.
Oh, yes.
About those, like a shared shed
yeah,
becoming 2 sheds,
yeah,
becoming 3 sheds, and then what do we have, you know,
yeah,
as
that's
far
on,
as, so,
we have that coming up on the
we'll
agenda.
touch on that later. Other than that, I got nothing else.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Richard, any highlights from the board meeting?
Sure. We continue the discussion about the purchase of the CSX railway right-of-way, but that's just ongoing. There's work being done, information's being gathered, property owners being talked to. So still, it'll probably be a discussion item again next week. The soil extraction ordinance, we had Doug and Needham from the Michigan Aggregates Association came in and did a presentation about why aggregates are needed in most places. And it was very informative and well received, I think. We are having soil testing done on the parcels that were the old right-of-way that are in the village here right now, and looking into some more on the additional that's outside the village limits, because that would be one of the big factors if there was significant contamination, whether we'd want to get involved in that right-of-way thing, that railroad thing. We're looking at various park and cemetery improvements. We've done a couple things that maybe most of you are already aware or have seen out at the Banks Township Park. There's a porta-john out there now to take the place of the old permanent structure, which was getting pretty nasty and getting abused. We have a trash can there, and we're working on various things about cemetery improvements, and we'll be talking about that again next week. And then, as you know, Anita stepping down from here was appointed to the zoning board of appeals. And obviously, we're welcoming Dave, and
Yes,
this is Travis's second meeting already. That's it.
okay, thank you. All right, Ruben from Beckett and Rader. Ruben, do you want to tell us why you're here and Ken is not, and maybe explain that to people a little more? I had called Ruben in preparation for this meeting, and that was a looming question in my mind, so maybe if you want to wax eloquent about that.
Yeah, certainly. So I'm in for Ken this evening. That's to be somewhat of a standard kind of arrangement on our end. He has another obligation at this time, and I am, he actually comes, we both work in the Petoskey office of Beckett and Rader, but he comes from closer to Harbor Springs this way, and I'm pretty close in Charlevoix County, so it's a little bit of a transition for us. We've had me taking on more of a role with Charlevoix and Antrim County communities, so I have plenty of experience working in Northwest Lower Michigan, in Antrim, Charlevoix, Emmett counties, and Ken is gonna stay involved. He has a lot of good background. We see each other all the time, so he's gonna be involved with packet preparation and everything, so that's really kind of the basics of it there. So yeah, it's very convenient and much less time consuming for everyone involved, and can certainly, we hope it can result in some cost savings just to have me close on hand, for sure, so.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. Yeah, and then you're up.
Yep, and so, my update, I think, really, I don't have all that much to go over right at this point. All the major points are covered later on in the agenda under unfinished business. So first we have revisiting the sand and gravel extraction ordinance that the township has on the books, and taking a look at the board's feedback from June. Then we have some more on the master plan, 5-year update, just some next steps there, and then I think between the two of us here, Curtis and myself, we're gonna have some first discussion on accessory dwelling units and efficiency units. So those are all later on in the agenda.
Okay. All right, thanks so much. All right, so now, but we are on the sand and gravel extraction ordinance. And we are tasked we are tasked with, we are asked by the board to have the planning commission create a new soil extraction ordinance in conjunction with Beckett and Rader and the township attorney as necessary. That is less restrictive than the current ordinance, but still has township protections in place and is compliant with zoning enabling act. Some of the, reasons that they gave for that was that it is too restrictive, too much legal ease. It needs to show that there's still steps being taken while in compliance with the zoning enabling act and protection for the township, so. We had, well, what would you like to say about that? I know we included some of this in your packet. One of the, ordinances that we looked at when the initial planning stages was, we were trying to find communities that were of same scope, size, and the operations were kind of same scale, and one of them was Norwood Township, and so we had looked at their ordinance, and I don't have that anymore, but we probably should take a look at theirs again. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here, but I really am not sure how to go about this.
Certainly, yeah, I can touch on it real quick. So, yeah, I think Patty mentioned the board's feedback about the soil and gravel extraction ordinance. I think you all are pretty familiar with this at this point. Really their goal is to, or their sort of takeaway was to rework the ordinance, simplify it, and just reduce the amount of sort of time-consuming review, make the process a little more straightforward for someone to conceivably apply for sand and gravel extraction use in the township. So I think the purpose for this evening really is just to run that, first of all, by all you and confirm that that's the direction that you all want to move. And there's some constraints in place by the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act and by certain case law. I think Silva versus Ada Township was a case law around, or a Michigan Court of Appeals case around 1980, and then there was another one in Leelanau County, Casson Township in 2008 that sort of defines how communities can go about regulating sand and gravel through their zoning, and one of them is that it really doesn't enable townships to prohibit sand and gravel uses in any particular place if an applicant can prove that there are those natural resources in the place, in that particular site. So it doesn't, the constraints of that case law doesn't allow the township to prohibit it in any place where that use could really, where an applicant can prove that that use could be established. And then there are some kind of general abilities for the township to review those uses with some discretion and regulate some of the off-site impacts potentially on there, but it doesn't, there are some additional restrictions that allow or sort of prohibit the township from allowing the use where there would be severe consequences or major consequences. And so those are kind of constrained by case law. So if it sounds good to you all, I think we can move forward with next month taking a look at some example ordinances that are throughout the state and comply with that case law, but are kind of much simplified from the ordinance that the township has on the books, and sort of simplify the legalese and make the process for applying for one of these much more straightforward. We can revisit, I think Norwood Township certainly, again, take a look at how they structure their process. And then I know there's some downstate in townships, downstate in Livingston and Washtenaw County that are primarily rural or sort of suburban residential that have some guardrails on those uses control the offsite impacts, but don't sort of outright prohibit them and make the process more feasible for, conceivably for an applicant, so, yeah, just wanted to put that back to you all for discussion. If it sounds good, we'll take a look at some of those ordinances
Yeah.
next time.
What do you think, guys?
Doesn't the state already have a overall, like, doesn't the state of Michigan has, this is for somebody?
There are, so, are you saying the state has an ordinance that?
Well, they're like a statute or whatever that says, you know, 'cause you have to allow mining.
Yeah.
The state says you have to allow mining. So does the state overall have a guideline, step by step of what, you know, a base model for the state is? Say if the township has no ordinance, does the state have something that the township could say, well, just do what the state says? Is there that?
There isn't like a model ordinance that the state has. There are other townships that I think we can look at, and they all kind of function within the zoning enabling act that, which is, it's more general, I think, than that, is, it says the townships, municipalities can't prohibit sand and gravel extraction where, unless they can prove there are very serious consequences, and that's sort of been litigated through case law over time. And so all the local regulations, it sort of makes it so, it kind of like compels the township to look at other township ordinances. The state doesn't exactly prescribe that, but it all has to kind of function within, what's been litigated through those case laws that say, you know, the township can't deny that in any place where it exists, like you said, and there has to be, it can't deny it except in certain circumstances where there are those very serious consequences. That's all been kind of litigated, so in doing that, we'll have to look to the attorney again, to sort of define what that is, but I think next time it would be looking at some of the adopted standards that are throughout the state, and I know, certainly looking at other places in this region, like Norwood Township, we could certainly do that, but, I talked with John and Ken earlier, today too, and they mentioned that there are a lot down in, Livingston County and, Washtenaw County, they just have a lot of those uses that have developed over time, they've had a lot of applications like that, so,
We've got one in East Jordan here, they've gotta have something, Elmira has one. I mean, it seems like it's closer than Livingston County that can be looked at.
there certainly could be,
Are
It
these
would-
zoned?
I think the Jordan Township is not zoned.
Yeah, I don't know if they're zoned.
And I know they had to go, when they put that one in East Jordan, they had to, there was some issues, and they, and I know like Elmira, they've got the berm around it, and
You mean the one on the way to Boyd City, almost to Boyd City? That one?
in Elmira, it's off.
No,
off
the
of
one
Lusky
East
Road.
Jordan one.
Yeah, the one in East Jordan, the Ellsworth East Jordan Road.
That's Southland Township.
Oh, yeah, okay. We talked about the one, it's almost
Boyd
like Boyd
City.
City.
Mhm.
I don't know what township that is.
Charlevoix, I don't know.
It's Charlotte County, I don't know exactly what, township
Township
it's
it
in
is.
though.
I would assume that's zone, but that might not be zone.
I don't know. So what do y'all think about, Ruben's proposal to gather some model, ordinances for us to look at to, move forward?
I'm in agreement with that.
Patty,
I'll go for it.
I got this. This was a, letter drafted by the previous chair, almost a year ago. I'm new to this board, I'm not new to this problem. This is a whole new board here. We can read through the whole thing and revisit the past 3 years, I prefer not to. I would like to touch base on, a couple areas of, you know, this has been before the public. There's been months, years, hundreds, thousands of dollars spent, countless hours by multiple members of the planning commission, because there's been multiple over the past 5, 6 years. hours at Beckett and Rader, I don't even know how much money legal that we've spent. There's been 6 public meetings, with 13 opportunities for public comment. Plenty of opportunity for opposition with none. I'm sure it's disheartening for Patty that has spent hours and hours coming up with a, pretty bulletproof ordinance that was presented to us through our legal and Beckett and Rader, that covers, the safety, well-being, the environment, all of that. We're just gonna throw that away and start over. Myself, being on a board that has gone back and forth and back and forth and back and forth with this for years, I have no appetite to revisit it. However, through some conversation, with legal, our new legal, not the old legal, there are some issues with it. Where they could, probably, it's maybe not as bulletproof as we thought it was, or it's written, as a defense more than a zoning ordinance, hence all the legalese that's in it. I'm totally fine with removing some of that, making it, I don't wanna say easier, because there's no one applying for this. No one's down here wanting to put a mine in.
Well, with talking to Elmer's, the reason they don't is because looking at the ordinance, it's not working.
Everyone's got someone that they talk to about this. No one has been here in 4 years of public hearing saying, you know, we find this too restrictive, or we find this. There's nothing in here that says you can't do it. It is hard to understand. I understand
Which on
that
its
part.
face, we shouldn't have something that you have to give a lawyer to interpret for you.
If you're putting in a multi-million-dollar company, aren't you gonna consult lawyers?
If I want to mine my farm, no, I wanna just mine my farm and sell some gravel. I don't have the money for that. And you need a lawyer to sort this out because of all the legal mumbo jumbo in it.
And I'm
And it
fine.
should be common sense, I should be able to look at this and, what can I do, okay, I can do that, I can't do that, okay.
Have you ever filled out a permit before? Have you ever filled out a building permit?
Yeah,
And how difficult is that? Have you ever put a, filled
and
out a health,
I deal with legal documents every day,
health
that
department?
is my job description,
Have you
legal
ever
documents.
dealt with an equal permit?
An equal permit?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
But again,
these are all
I understand
difficult permits. It's because it has such a huge impact
I'm not saying,
on our area.
I'm not saying you shouldn't have to jump through hoops, I'm saying I should be able to look through this and say, okay, I need to get this permit, I need to get this permit, I need to get this permit. I'm not saying you shouldn't have to jump through all the hoops, I'm saying the common layman should be able to look at it and understand.
And we can ease that up. The ordinance that was passed, along with the PPO, was passed to become compliant with the agreement at that time was we would go back and revisit the PPO and see where we could make it easier in some of these areas. Again, no one's asking for that, no one's down here, asking for a permit. There was an applicant, a couple years ago that wants to put a 180-acre mine in. You know how big that is?
Yeah.
Of course, because you have nearly that. We keep referring to Drum Brothers pits and how this community's been based on gravel pits, which it has. Old Dixie, 39 acres, 40 acres. Ellsworth, the Hershey pit that's not even in our township or county, 40 acres. Essex Road, 15, 19, 20. Village of Ellsworth, 12, 16. Best Road, that they didn't even hardly mine, they stripped the topsoil off, is 77. Adds up to 278 acres of all properties combined, could fit into one pit. It's not a gravel pit that we know of, that we grew up around looking at.
Mhm.
It's a mine, a huge mine. we want protections and order. And this zoning ordinance did that. The legal part of it could be cleaned up, I agree. It is difficult to read, I agree. But throwing the baby out with the bathwater doesn't make any sense to me. To go over this.
And I don't
again
disagree with
for-
that, but I don't know where you start, having read through this, I don't even know where you start, because of the legal mumbo jumbo, where you start to even make it so, again, common guy who's got 50 acres and wants to mine it, can look at it and jump through it without having to hire a lawyer.
All of our zoning is written by attorneys.
Being written by it, I could show you the traffic law book right now, and you could look at it, and you can read it, and you could understand it. That's all written by lawyers.
How does that affect your neighborhood?
What does that have to do with anything? Being able to read a document and understand it, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying throw this out, I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying I ought to be able to read it and understand it.
There is.
Are you disagreeing with that?
I'm not disagreeing that you
Okay.
should be understand it.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, there is countless zoning ordinances in our zoning that you probably don't understand. No offense, but you probably have to ask for some legal clarification.
And that's
Maybe not,
I'll give
maybe
you a
not.
perfect example. We had the land split for my mom's house, we're gonna do it again for Shane's.
Mhm.
3 different questions we had, we called different people that work for the township, nobody could answer my question. The answer I got was, you'll have to contact a lawyer. When I call the township, my taxes paid for, on a question on their ordinance, they should be able to answer my question. The reply should not be, hire a lawyer.
I've run. the
So
gamut,
So when the people who wrote the ordinances can't give me an answer on their ordinances, it's too complicated.
Doesn't make it any less important.
I didn't say it's not, you're spinning, I'm not saying it's not important, I'm saying you ought to be able to read it and not get told by a township employee, call a lawyer, cause I don't know.
Well, that's a different matter. I'm not saying that's not important, Travis, but, how do we go forward? They denied our, it says exactly,
But if you think I wanna jump back into this, you're crazy.
the lawyer's
No,
asking,
I don't think anyone does.
Create a
But
new
there's a
soil.
reason that it's back in our lap.
yeah.
And it's not because people are beating down the door saying, oh, it's too restrictive. It's too hard to understand.
Have we gotten any direction from our township attorney who's new, obviously, and as you stated, Dave, there is pros and cons to both sides of it. Has there been any kind of direction from the township attorney that says, these are potential problematic areas that you guys need to review? Has there been any direction?
We haven't, or I haven't had a conversation with her yet.
That's exactly why this is here. They said it's too restrictive, it's too complicated, you gotta do something about it.
So, but if that's why we have them, right? If that's what we're all discussing, the problem is that our attorneys are saying this is what the issue is, but they can't, is there any kind of direction that they can give? So they're not putting the planning commission and the township board on a lone island, to potentially go back through the same process and make it more complicated than it needs to be. Cause we're all sitting here making the argument, but we all have no direction moving forward. We're just gonna sit here and argue over not having.
Is it something the lawyers can unlawyer?
That's all I'm trying to find out. Where is our next step and how do we have a solid direction as a team and as a board to go and try to make a decision on?
Well, we need legal here. We had
We
plenty
do.
of legal advice on the last one, which is why we ended up with the last one. Maybe they were wrong, but we have to trust the professionals. We have to trust the people we hire. Maybe we were led astray. Maybe, it's just, there's been so much time exhausted already. I just don't wanna start fresh. And everything in our zoning ordinance covers everything, our master plan, it's taking, everything into account. You know, we keep hearing preserve the farmland.
Yeah, and open space.
And open space, well, how's a gravel pit preserving it? You know, the reclamation process, in the end, if it ever makes it to the end, maybe, you know, we see some of these Red Brother pits that are out there, and they serve us well, they provide us water on the flat road for the fire department. You know, they've provided a subdivision, ball fields, you know, these are great assets to our community. A huge gravel mine, I just don't feel that that's something you put back together.
All that you're saying is true, Dave, but here's the deal. The board made a decision to deny the amendments to the soil extraction ordinance. So we have to come up with another one. And I would like to take Ruben's suggestion and look at ordinances that are easier for people to understand, read, you know, it has to meet the current zoning enabling act, which is the code word is, no very serious consequences to the health, safety, and welfare to all involved. And, so it has to be compliant with that, and, you know, they denied it, so now we gotta move forward with, other models, other examples that perhaps are out there. I said we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I was at the presentation where Doug Needham, you know, we all know we need gravel, but it's just how to go about it, and yeah, that's what I have to say. Richard?
Could I, share an idea with you folks? I proposed a much simplified ordinance a few months back that wasn't utilized. But this is another one that actually just came to our board meeting, one for you too. I've got one more, you guys can share one.
Where's this from, Richard?
This was put together by, that Doug Needham, the Michigan Agricultural Association. They had a lot of, input into this.
Okay.
They also,
Take an amendment from
notice
the
right at the
lobbyist,
top that this
an ordinance.
is based on Senate Bill 431, which is a bill that addresses this
asinine.
whole aggregate thing all over the state. So, and I think this thing does a great job of protecting us. So I would just like this to be
Anybody listening to this
something
video,
we
he's
might
talking
consider.
about a lobbyist. We're gonna
We're
look at an
gonna
ordinance that a lobbyist put together, who has a
Ruben's
vested
gonna
interest in how this
work on
outcome
stuff, you can look at this one.
is.
I think it hits all the important stuff, but it sure is simpler.
Okay, well, let's throw this in the hopper, let's throw
Yeah.
this in the mix, and Ruben, if you would get some other ones, that would be good. So what do we do, how do we pull Nicole into this? Do we decide first what we want and then have her review, or what's procedure here?
Yeah, I'm thinking one option would be to get her opinion, because it sounds like she has not weighed in since this ordinance has really been substantially worked on. So it could, one option could be to get her, opinion on how it stacks up against case law, like currently, and if we could get like a written note, someone, I think on our end over here can work with her to maybe get that by next meeting, if that would be useful to you all. And then I can say from our standpoint, I think we're, to our knowledge, this is certainly compliant with case law and like defensible. However, there are certainly like much simpler ordinances around the state that are easier to read and also have there are fewer steps to the process of applying for one of these uses. So, you know, there's a couple of different public hearings in this ordinance now that the township has. There's a separate step for rezoning to a planned unit development, basically for a PUD overlay for this, so that is typically time consuming. assuming. There's the soil removal permit, sort of aspect of it, so for these, and all of that is more complicated than a lot of other ordinances that are also legally compliant around the state. So, yeah, that being said, there, as you've highlighted, there's like a couple ways to go about it. I think that would be legally defensible, certainly, or would result in a legally defensible ordinance. We could work on the current language and sort of try and cull down the legalese and kind of wordiness of it and make it more understandable. We can certainly do that. And then there might be another route where we want to make substantial changes to the process itself, where, you know, we might reduce the number of hearings or approach it more as a special use instead of like a rezoning to a PUD. So if that's something that you all wanted to do to make the process easier, that's sort of maybe a different route to think about. So if you wanna maybe think of it as like two different approaches to simplifying the ordinance, that's something for you all, I think, to continue thinking about.
That's helpful, Ruben. Will you, in our next meeting, will you maybe, put like a pros and cons why we'd wanna have a PUD versus, special use? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes.
And that would help us kind of sort out and pick direction.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
good.
that
I think we can, do a little comparison of ordinances and put together pros and
Shit, don't
cons
too bad as it is.
of, doing a PUD versus a, special use, and whether it's worth, and you all can take that and think about whether it's worth like substantially changing the process in that way. Does that all sound all right?
Can we start with our new legal? Telling us
What was wrong?
what's wrong with our current and just go with that before we start introducing every other ordinance from every other township and
Yeah.
every other
Do we-
special district.
Yeah, I don't want you to spend hours and hours on that. I think that's a good first step. And just ask Nicole, where did we, what's wrong here?
Is that also for the board itself who kicked it back? Is there some, you know, specific?
This is what we got, what you all have.
Right, but,
We went back and forth and it always comes down to it's too hard to understand, Travis. This is not, you're not the first person to say it.
well, and the one thing,
But-
you weren't glad, when I did the one thing I did see in it, you know, not coming from mining, but coming from farming, somehow having to backfill it, whereas, you know, that was to me, in my, you know, if I looked at it, how I would farm it, that it was, you know, I can't backtrack an acre back behind me if I'm going forward. So that was the one thing I could see is financially, if I gotta have equipment, you know, it didn't make sense how it was worded in that aspect of how you had to reclaim land and acre it as you're moving forward and stuff. So that was the one thing I saw in there that was like, man, that would be a pain.
Well, if I can interject there, not to belabor this again, but that was more than an acre at a time.
I can't remember, I'd have to.
That was
go
like,
through. It was,
figure it's 10 acres or so, or
no, it
20,
wasn't 10
and then,
acres, it was.
you know, that gets taken care of before it just lays there for 60 years before that part gets, you know, if they're all done there. I think that's what that was about, but.
But I think originally when the ordinance was passed, these were the areas that we would consider revisiting without taking the teeth out of the zoning ordinance. And now we have a new legal team saying that, well, maybe it's full of legal jargon that we don't understand. They can tell us it's so pulled up and then it doesn't. It's
I've
like,
gotta imagine they can go through and redline what their recommendation would, just like you would in any other contract negotiations. I mean, we do them frequently. Typically, one legal team will go and you see where they're trying to go to, and then it's, as a board, we get the final say. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
I imagine, yeah.
I think we get them to point out areas that we might feel to change and loosen it and start with that and present that to the board and have them kick it back. You know, we kicked
Yeah,
this
it
back
can
and
go
forth for 6 years.
Sure. We don't want to
And this
do
is what you
that.
jump back into.
We don't want to, no, no, we wanna get it right, and it can go back and forth, there's no harm in that, so. Okay, do you have direction from, good sense of what we wanna do, Ruben?
Yeah, so it sounds like getting an opinion from
From
Nicole
Nicole
on
first.
next time on just what she thinks from her angle can be simplified, where it's potentially, you know, there are problems with, you know, how it could be litigated and stuff. That sounds like that's good for next time.
Okay. Alright. Yeah, and, do you think it's worthwhile then to continue or explore the special use versus PUD, separating that out? It is what it is, I mean, we've got the PUD overlay, so that's what, I don't know if that was the problem, the
Mhm.
process was the problem.
Yeah, I think potentially depending on what Nicole says, but if, I might suggest getting Nicole's opinion,
Okay.
taking it one step at a time
Very good.
first, would be valuable to
Sure.
you all.
Yeah, there's not, yeah. Okay, any further discussion on this? We'll take a look at this. Yes, it was disappointing, of course, but I do wanna get it right, and we do need gravel, and, yeah. So what do I have to say about that? All right, moving on to the master plan, 5-year revision, let's just take it from the top, goals and objectives. Ruben did the red line for us, their original language is there, and pretty much word for word in the current. Ruben, do you wanna take point here, or
Yeah.
how do you wanna
certainly.
do this?
We can kind of approach this how you like, but maybe if it's helpful, I can just do like a quick sort of summary of the content that's in the
Sure.
packet here. So what it is tonight, there's 2 draft master plan chapters. First, goals and objectives and actions. This is sort of a summary of everything the township wants to achieve. It's sort of goal statements. If you look, starting on this page 11 of the packet, starting with natural resources goals, it breaks it down from very broad goals, things like retain and enhance quiet and scenic rural character, and then breaks that down into actions. So measurable things the township can take on in the next 5 to 10 years to sort of put that into practice. And so those goals are there sort of in the background, so when you all get different applications for this kind of thing, or potentially you're considering a zoning amendment to address certain issues, you can look to the goals and see if this is sort of in keeping with what the township wants to see overall, represented by those goals. So, this is what is in your current master plan from 2019. We thought carrying most of it forward, into the new draft, is really the right approach. A lot of them, the goals and actions will continue to be relevant in the next 5 to 10 years, but we did do a track changes version to this. So really, first I'll say the goals cover a number of different topics. First, natural resources, you know, things like wetlands, forests, agricultural lands, you know, then it goes into infrastructure and services, and then housing and neighborhood goals, and then business and economic development goals. And so those are kind of your different topic buckets within the plan. So again, we carry pretty much all of the goals and actions forward. They seem, if you'll remember, last time we took a look at the survey results from this most recent survey and compared it to the 2019 results. And I think, as we discussed, most of them are pretty similar, give pretty similar kind of direction that the township wants to see in the next 5 to 10 years, but with some slight changes. So encouraging a little bit more in the way of housing format. Hopefully you all can see that reflected in the track changes that we put in here in the housing and neighborhood goals. So, we did a little bit of changes here, you can see, I don't think we need to go into, each one of them one by one, but, you know, easing the restriction potentially on, single, or principal uses on a single lot in the village residential area, that's in Atwood. Considering density increases potentially in a residential development that also preserves natural resources. That's something the township could consider. And so we just kind of made some kind of minor adjustments to better reflect the survey results from this time around is the goal here. So that's kind of a summary here. Everything is taken from your current master plan, and just the sort of red highlighted track changes there are the changes that we sort of put in here into this draft based on what we heard last time. You know, there was some discussion last time too, if you look on infrastructure and services, about sort of reforming the breezeway task force. That's something that folks wanted to see based on the survey, so that's in here. Yeah, I'm happy to go into any of them, either from your current master plan or any of them that I added in here in more detail with you all. But that's sort of a quick summary of this chapter. And so, yeah, just wanted to present this to you all and see if you had any thoughts on changes that you would like to see, you know, what we proposed here. And then, if it's all right, I'll just quickly summarize. The future land use chapter is the second chapter that's in the packet here. This really is meant to reflect the goals and objectives and put it into, you know, where should all of this sort of take place in the township. And so all the different future land use categories here, from forest, agricultural to waterfront residential, residential here, we carried forward these from your current master plan, and similarly to the goals, did some kind of like minor adjustments to reflect what we all saw in the survey this time around. So that's things like allowing a little more in the way of small lot, single family residential development within the residential category, including a little bit more upper floor residential uses in the village mixed use area in Atwood. And so, yeah, really the goal here is to make the future land use categories more reflective of the goals and objectives, and make those sort of very consistent with one another. So, yeah, that's sort of an overview. There is, this is all taken from your current master plan and updated based on the survey results. So, yeah, is that helpful? I guess if I had to go into any more detail on any of that, I know it's certainly a lot.
Yes, it is helpful. I know this is a draft, so, back at the top though, natural resources and open space goals, could you add that? Yeah. I appreciate the fresh eyes on this, looking at this versus the old. There's some, things that I of course never thought about, is the forest for the trees effect. I really, think it's, interesting that, about the upper floor residential over commercial. Yeah, that's, that happens, and just to make sure we, you know, have, people have the ability to do that if they want. I'll just say all I have, and then you are welcome to say whatever you have, of course. Ruben, on RS 17, so it'd be page 7. It talks about public realm improvements. There are a few vacant commercial properties in Atwood, and just looking on Google Street View, it looks like it could use some public realm improvements. Would you be able to flesh that out, like a for example for us at all, or is that just good to have that,
Mhm.
yeah, what does that look like? I like facts.
Yeah, certainly. Okay, I'm just looking here. So this is something, the action that, first of all, that's my comment overall to the side there, that I inputted. And then the action is, from the township's 2019 master plan. It says, explore a corridor improvement authority in Atwood to support public infrastructure and business development and retention. And so, based on what I can see, that hasn't materialized in the township, but really what the idea is there is to form some kind of, corridor improvement authority. They are entities that are, kind of not part of township government, but they're enabled by the state to sort of collect. It uses a mechanism called tax increment financing, where, this entity, within a very specific, kind of geographic boundary, as far as which parcels would be included within it. It collects future increases in, tax revenue on those properties, typically mixed use or commercial, or, mixed commercial residential, in order to pay for improvements to like streetscaping or, sidewalks or, consolidated curb cuts, things like that. In what that does is in turn spur, sort of economic development. And so, my take is that it is a very good practice to have that kind of thing in a lot of communities. A lot of, cities and villages will undertake a corridor improvement authority or form one to, sort of get, economic development off the ground. And so it's something to think about. It is certainly a little like further out there for a township like Banks Township that doesn't have, public water and wastewater, facilities there. But it's something that you all could think about to like pay for that kind of infrastructure eventually. So, not something that I think is, just based on my understanding, really likely to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, but something to kind of keep in there as an eventual goal, maybe.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying on that.
Mhm. And again, that is something from your current master plan that's in there.
Comments?
Well, Atwood's booming. It's got all the business, all the new builds. Let's focus on that.
Yes.
How to improve the infrastructure. The three of us own a lot of Atwood. And talking to like some of the businesses, natural gas is the biggest complaint that any of them have up there. We've got, a couple big industrial buildings that, would be beneficial to them. The large hardware, Friskies, these would be huge savings for these businesses that have chose.
And why is that? Is there any, why?
There's a lot.
I've always been curious about it.
It's an ongoing thing, we've been directly involved.
But it's there, right?
No, it's still 5 miles away.
Oh, they are?
The closest one comes from the north, it's in the Norwood area.
Oh,
And it's still
I take
hundreds
that
of
back.
thousands of dollars to
yeah,
get it there.
I thought it was,
No, we have
Okay.
pretty current numbers, and actually it's something I'd like to bring to the township at some point, because it's more than any one or two businesses are gonna do, but this kind of thing
Yeah,
might.
but I mean, encouraging, or that's the only, I think, infrastructure thing that we can kind of get
Yeah.
behind,
That's
and it's
doable, practical
doable.
one.
Yeah.
that would be the biggest payoff
Yeah.
for payback.
Cause I mean, like for Gaylor, which is a lot bigger, that's how we businesses that weren't in because they wanna tie into our sewer and our water, that's, you know, like, that's why Meyer is in the city. All the businesses after Meyer leading up to this aren't, because it, you know, but that's how we attract more is with our, with those benefits, but, you know, I think Dave's right, where if you get that natural gas in there, that's a big savings for, you know, somebody would buy Closter's and have to eat it.
Mhm.
It's gonna cut their costs in half.
Well, we do have an industrial zoning that no one is gonna come there and build a 1,600,000 square foot facility and try to eat it with the co-op. You know, it is, you know, they can drill a well, they can put in a drain field, you know, but
Is that something that is, in our scope in terms of our, as a planning commission, or is that more board directed?
I think the township board
Yeah,
needs to.
I was just commenting on the infrastructure,
Right,
you know,
you're
a portion
right.
of, and try to encourage that.
Would that be
growth.
something that the authority, or the action team that you're talking about would be able to assist in that? I mean,
Yeah, I think potentially, so to bring in a new, like, natural gas provider in that area, sounds like is sort of the eventual goal.
it would be awesome, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just a
yeah.
connection from
Yeah.
this side, I mean, it's on both ends of the township,
Mhm.
doesn't come through.
Yeah, I think.
Are there like grants for rural areas like that,
Yeah, there might be grant opportunities. I think some communities for broadband and that kind of thing have formed like a subcommittee to sort of reach out to, like those kind of entities to get like the cost of it, for doing that. So they kind of like communicate with the entities and see, you know, like what, the feasibility of doing it is. So something like the task force might be able to take that on, the Breezeway task force.
For the corridor authority. Richard, you said you were directly involved, what's your role in your involvement?
We've had, my family, my kids, have had meetings with there's only one gas company.
Michigan?
DTE.
DTE, that's it, yeah. They're the only ones that would do it. And so they have put together a proposal within the last 6 months. I'm gonna actually, thanks for the reminder, I hadn't even thought about talking to the board yet about it, but I'm gonna ask to get that on the agenda and start talking about it. And I don't have the information in my
Okay.
head, but I know it's all in emails that we have ready.
Okay, that's
This
encouraging.
has been going on for quite a while. 5, 8 years ago, Dave Draper and others met with the same gas company up there in his office, and that's when it kind of started, and then it's just been a slow, steady, ongoing thing. Since then, Ellsworth got it. And it could come from Ellsworth, it could come from the south, it could come from the north. DTE says, their analysis says the best way to go is from the north. They have more opportunities to connect more residences along the way. And there would, actually, there's a lot of people who benefit from it. Ruben, when you talked about the TIF, is that, the funding from that comes from businesses within that, is that what you were saying? Like, assessments or voluntary, how does that work?
Yeah, it is, yeah, with tax increment financing, it is, as, property values increase over time, it's everything from the moment the TIF entity starts collecting or is formed, everything that's increased above sort of what it is at that time, gets sort of collected into the entity, so it's all the properties within that jurisdiction, then it's like property tax, I think, yeah.
So is it an increase in property taxes, or just as values go up, that increase can go into this fund you're talking about?
Yep, it's not, it doesn't require like an increase in the tax rate at all, but just the kind of natural like appreciation over time of property values, whatever increase in revenue that's generated from that goes into the entity. But yeah, it doesn't require like an increase in the rate.
Yeah, it's not
Again-
wanting more property taxes, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
No.
it's something to think about. It's kind of, to me, if you all decide to keep it in there, it's something out there sort of on the horizon, not like a super imminent task, and we can make sure that that's clear in the plan.
That would be good. Any other comments on, the sections that we reviewed on the master plan, goals and objectives, future land use? If not, Ruben, do you have good direction from us regarding what we wanna do with what you proposed?
Yes,
Okay.
I think we have just a couple of adjustments to make to this section to sort of play up the natural gas provision as a potential goal over time, and then to sort of adjust that idea about the corridor improvement authority, just to emphasize that it's long-term. So if it sounds good to you all, that is really, we've been through everything in the draft master plan, so I think for next time, we'll plan to have the full document together for you to take a look at and sort of see how it all fits together, everything from like the survey results through what you all have in the packet tonight. And then if you all are comfortable, you can make any changes that you want to at that point, or suggest any kind of smaller refinements from there. But if it looks good to you all, we can proceed with sort of there's a 63-day review process where your surrounding jurisdictions and the county have to get notified that it's available for review and comment and that kind of thing, so we can proceed with the notice and getting into the adoption next time if the content looks good to you all, so.
I guess, can you explain to me what the red indicates, and then I guess there's crossed out, is this been discussed at previous meetings, or, I know it's a draft, but how do we derive at this, I guess?
Yeah, in the new, in what you have in the packet this evening, all the black text is existing text from the 2019 master plan that we've proposed, we've just carried forward and it's not changed at all. The red underlined text is new text that I've kind of typed in based on the survey results.
And then the crossed out is obviously.
Yep,
that.
yeah,
Thank you.
so none of that will be in the draft next time, if you all are comfortable with the material.
More questions for Ruben? Before we move on?
Have you guys been provided this as you've gone through the chapters each time?
Yeah, section by section.
Okay. Can I get drafts, I guess even if it's the final draft of each session, or,
Yes, of course. Now, if you put this all together, you'll see what we've worked on, and you'll have an opportunity to review and comment that before we adopt it. Does that sound like
Yeah.
sufficient?
yeah,
Okay.
because at this point I've got 2 chapters.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
in the same boat.
Yep, next time will be
Yeah, same.
everything together,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, you may have some tweaks too, David and Travis. Okay, moving on, preliminary discussion regarding accessory dwelling units update. This doesn't have to be a long drawn out thing, we wanted just to touch base on this. We had talked about, Curtis had a question, brought forth a scenario last time about putting 2 dwellings together, and I don't know if they made it past building code or not, or, you know, any of that, but there was some gray area for us. After that conversation, or could be gray area for us, after that conversation, I had a new acquaintance friend, her daughter, they live in the Jordan Valley, there's no zoning over there, her daughter, had to move back onto their property, she's a single mom, and the most affordable we were talking, last time we talked about housing, affordable housing, the most affordable, attractive thing for this mom to do was to, purchase 2 of the little dwellings that the Amish are making and put them together instead of trying to get a loan to, you know, mortgage to rehab an old house in East Jordan. And so that is what worked for them, and that's all well and good, but, we might wanna look at our ordinance in terms of accessory dwelling units, and I'll let you two decide, you know, among yourselves, what gray area there is, we don't have to belabor that, but that's just why that's on the agenda.
I asked Ruben to look at just some of the other townships to see if they're addressing that specifically. And we're talking about storage sheds here. They're on skids, okay? We address in our ordinance, we talk about, economy efficiency units, and talks about efficiency units, which, that's a whole tiny house thing. But it also says that those are on a fixed and permanent foundation. Well, that doesn't qualify for these other,
Is that
these
what we,
sheds, huh?
is that what we approved a couple years ago with the plan?
Well, it's under
with that-
definitions, it's not,
with that
you know,
Accessory dwelling unit, 'cause I thought that we were
well,
referring to like the mother-in-law cottage or the,
so you got basically three things going here. You've got the ADU, right? Which it has to be along the side of the house. If it's 2-bedroom, it can't be over 1,000 square feet. It's 1-bedroom, it can't be over 800.
that's I think. what-
All that stuff, if it's in like a pole barn, it can have a storage area, but it's defined by the living space. Don Miles had that situation, okay. So you got ADUs, but you've also got that extra building or extra dwelling on a parcel is talked about in here. That was originally for, a situation, a health situation of a family member. Okay, so that's in there. Then if you go to definitions, we define economy efficiency unit and efficiency unit. There's 2 different definitions in there. And those are for the tiny house thing. If they're built on, we've watched plenty of the tiny house things on TV, right? And they're all trailers, they're all wheeled type things. I didn't really, I have to look again, but I didn't really see that addressed in here as a tiny house. What we talk, when we're talking efficiency units, again, it's on a foundation. If we get a situation where people wanna throw a couple sheds together, and now if they're more than 200 square feet, they've got an issue, because they gotta get a permit, right? But under 200 square feet, you don't need a permit to put up a shed, as long as you abide by the setbacks. At what point do these collide, you know, and now we've got an issue to address. And I got a couple things for public comment when we're done here. But that's when Frank was here. If Frank were here tonight, I was gonna ask him if they've had any issues at the county, at the building department about that, because again, they have requirements, in order to get an occupancy permit, right? And it states that in the economy efficiency unit, you gotta have all these things that allow you to get an occupancy permit, at a minimum of 350 square feet or something like that. You know, the bathroom facilities and everything else. But again, you got people that out of desperation are looking for solutions, right? And if you're in an unzoned township, you can do whatever you want, I guess, you can get away with. I think don't they still have to deal with their own building departments? Instead of counties? I mean,
You'd still have to deal with the building department.
yeah.
I mean, if you're,
So,
if it's.
and what the building department does for us is it kicks it back to zoning, which goes back to the situation with the porch. No permit was pulled. Had a permit been pulled, it would've got kicked back to us to begin with to say, here's the situation. That's why it got so far down the line. So, to go back, if we can just see if anybody else is dealing with this specifically, and just see what they got, and then we'll come back
Okay,
Cause it's not a pressing problem,
No.
nobody's trying to do it yet, just the
Right.
one I talked about last week,
Yeah.
last month, which was really a separate, just a, kind of a hobby shed type thing that they wanted water in the sink so they could wash up. So, I would suggest we just do that and call it good for now.
okay, sounds like a plan. Okay, moving on then, new business, election of planning commission officers. Do you wanna just put like a slate together and then just have a single vote? How would you like to do this? Well, otherwise I'll have to take a nomination.
What are the offices?
It's chair, vice chair, and secretary, just the three.
Nominate Patty for chair.
Second that.
I nominate Travis for chair.
I second that.
There you go.
Good, oh, good play.
There's a motion, a second, and they didn't meet,
Well, I want Patty to be chair, so.
that just went crazy.
Okay, what's first off?
There was a motion, a second done, and then you guys didn't address it, and then you had another motion, a second, you're all out of, you're,
Right, we are not, this is not Robert's rules by any stretch of the imagination. I just was trying to get a feel for what people wanna, may not wanna be doing. So I would I'm really not familiar with the process, so I would take a motion for,
I could tell you the process.
chair, I would take a motion for chair, vice chair, and secretary. Let's do it like that, we'll put together a slate.
We've got two already for chair.
Let me turn
And
my
they've both been
recording on.
seconded, right?
But you have two motions and support already, right now, you can't get away with it, they're already made, a motion and support. Now you have to go back to that first motion and support and vote
Okay.
on it and deal with the second one. That's not usually how any election goes.
Okay,
I would
The-
say you have two nominations, not two motions. And so you have an election to carry out between the two nominations.
That's what happened with that, right there, yeah.
alright, so let's take it one by one. We have a nomination for chair, and that would be myself and Travis.
First, the people that were nominated need to say whether they accept the nomination.
Okay,
They can have the option to say, I don't wanna be on it, and then you can't be forced to hold a position, even if everybody votes on it.
okay.
That's why the person has to accept the nomination or not.
Okay. I accept the nomination.
Oh, then I decline it. Take that.
Okay.
That makes it easy.
All right. So, all in favor of myself as chair?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I would like a nomination for vice chair, which would, your position, your role would be, if I'm not here, you chair the meeting, essentially. And so,
It can't be,
I would nominate Travis.
Can't.
Phyllis.
it can't be, Richard can't hold an
that's right.
office.
Yeah,
He's spared.
okay. I
I'll
would,
make the motion, or sorry.
go ahead.
I'll make a motion for Travis as vice chair.
I would second that motion. All in favor?
Does he accept?
Oh, sorry, Chair.
Sounds like you were the boss, huh?
Are you good with that? Okay, all in favor of Travis being chair?
Aye.
Aye. Alright, and now we need a secretary, and the secretary, I served once, Cindy is our recording secretary. I didn't even sign notes, so, do we need that position?
Yes, and it's just a signature once in a while from
Okay.
Cindy will tell you when that happens, when
Well,
it's
if
needed.
you don't have to have one, because the chair, vice chair can.
You have to have a
sign.
secretary.
I think you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might depend on your bylaws.
Yeah, well, I guess.
Yeah.
I would have to take a look again.
You are required to have a secretary, I can just tell you that.
Pardon me?
You are required to have a secretary.
Okay, so I would take a nomination for secretary.
I'll make a nomination for Dave.
To be secretary,
Second.
I've always wanted to be a secretary.
and are you okay with being secretary?
The only
Yeah,
good thing is
I
you
think so.
don't
Tell
have
me
to,
one now.
you don't really have to do it this time. We've got a great.
As long as Cindy's here, I'm totally
Yes.
fine.
Okay, all in favor of Dave being secretary, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Dave, congratulations.
And Dave, did you second that yourself, or was that Richard?
I second it.
Okay. candidates. Okay, time for public comment.
I have one.
Julie.
After my time being on the planning commission, and as all of you can see going through this, how important it is that Beckett and Rader, the professionals, the civil engineers, are here to assist us. And I know there's been talk at the board level about the cost of Beckett and Rader. And I hope that everybody here realizes how crucial they are to understanding the laws. They went to school for this, right? And as great as everyone is and well-intentioned, we need Beckett and Rader, and unfortunately, it's expensive. And I just hope that our community understands to not put pressure on the board to cut their costs, because they're vital to this process. So that's my comment tonight.
Thank you, Julie. Marv?
Yeah, a couple comments that were brought up in the meeting. Richard brought up the comment about setbacks and how far it is, and I would concur. I think you should look at setbacks and consider, if you don't wanna, go all the way and eliminate them up to the road right away, perhaps you could, as you were dealing with Lake Shore, have a formula to set them based on the speed limit of the road. That might solve your cold spot zone or whatever. What about setbacks on if you own two parcels? And then do you still have the same setbacks? I'm asking questions, something to consider, because if.
You do, because in case it's been sold,
Uh-huh.
you know,
But
if you were to
one-
sell it, you would have, you know, then to somebody else.
And so in that case, do you really need the setbacks in those, if for any of the parcels? The board, made it easier, for any landowner to combine parcels. Parcels cannot always be combined if they're in different sections, but a lot of times, if a landowner owns two parcels, they could combine them, and that would help on this issue. I would encourage you, Doug Needham came, as was mentioned, to our board meeting. I would encourage you to watch that if it's on Facebooks,
YouTube?
YouTube,
Mhm.
thanks. He's a good resource if you have questions regarding this. He's the
Again, a lobbyist.
chairman of the Michigan Aggregates Association, and so he deals with issues all over the state regarding soil extraction. And he's a really good resource, and I'm pretty sure he would be no cost to you or the township. So watch that and ask him questions. Based on your questions about understandability and being able to read some of this stuff, I would really encourage you to read the Zoning Enabling Act, especially the portion that has to do with soil extraction. It's very easy to read, it's simple, and it's straightforward. Just know what it says, because that is the law, to do it. One request I might have with Ruben or someone that's gonna be talking with Nicole on the complication of the gravel or soil extraction would be, currently we have two soil extraction ordinances. We have one in the zoning ordinance and the other one in the police ordinance. And that really complicates it. There's overlap, there could be contradictions. Ask her if that's a good idea to have it in two different ordinances dealing with the same thing. And I wanna say again, thank you all for taking on this role. It's obvious tonight that you all are very thoughtful in your deliberations and your words, and I congratulate you on that, and thank you for putting that effort into it.
I have a few things. First of all, I appreciated the hearty discussion earlier. It's good to see feedback, between each other. That way you know what's going on, and I think you flesh things out better that way, so I appreciated that. When it comes to simplicity, Travis, you talked about how easy it should be. Yeah, and I should be able to do my taxes on a postcard. How long have we been saying that? Practically my whole life, right? And here, we still got that. So that's an inevitability. I'd also like to say that even when something is written clearly, that it looks like it should be easy to understand. Having done this now for 4 years, there's things in there that read simply, but I'll guarantee you, sooner or later, somebody's gonna come to me with an exception.
Yes, exactly.
Well, what about this? And it's like, ugh. Now, I know that's under the role of zoning administrator to be able to interpret things. I have that authority. I've been told that. I can do that. But you still wanna be consistent. And, even the simple things can sometimes prompt a question, you know, and where you need to talk to somebody else, maybe not necessarily an attorney. As a zoning administrator, frankly, I'd appreciate it be simplified. I'd much prefer simplified stuff, because frankly, if it's not, if it is complicated, I'll guarantee you, I'm going to an attorney if another application comes in, because on something like that, especially the big stuff, I'm not gonna hang my neck out there and make some decision to approve something that I might be wrong on, that affects a whole township, you know? I like the job, but, you know, I'm not doing that. So, I appreciate the simplicity, if we can get it down and make it more clear. Okay, here's another question that just, it's probably been answered before, but I need to be refreshed. So if we get a big pit in the township, all right? And then 5 other people wanna dig pits, do they all have to be approved? It seems to me we have the right, part of that whole thing was, is it necessary? Is the resource necessary in the township? Do you remember anything like that, Richard? I mean, do we have to
There'd
approve
be
it,
a
or
market,
that's one of
yeah.
the, isn't that one of the criteria?
Mhm.
That, you know, first of all, is there material there? In other words, is there a need for it?
Yeah.
Right? So how do you decide that need for it, if you've got, let's say you got one big one going in the township? Can the board, planning commission say, well, we don't need another one? Or do you let, competition kick in there? Say, well, yeah, let's have 10, why not? Who cares? I don't know that that's really truly being addressed. I mean, you talk about wanting to be able to mine your property for gravel. Well, if there's another one a mile away that's going on, and that one started first, is Travis gonna get to do his? Just throwing it out there. These are things that are gonna come back, eventually flow through me. So, if it's, depending on how the ordinance is written, right? And lastly, I'll just say this about Atwood. Atwood's been the redheaded stepchild since we moved here in 1990. We were still on a four-person party lines in the mid-90s. So I'm not surprised they don't have gas yet.
Okay. Any other public comments? If not, thank you all, will adjourn, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? Travis, second, excuse me, Tyler, second, and, next meeting is August 12th.